Well, hello, welcome to In the Growth Space. David here, and really glad that you're with me for another episode of In the Growth Space. You know, oftentimes here on the podcast, I talk about growth around, our personal growth, our leadership growth, our company growth, our team growth. And so today, this episode may seem like maybe a little bit of a different episode or a little different kind of a subject. But I think it's an opportunity for all of us just to get outside of our comfort zone a little bit and grow in and expand in our understanding of different subjects and subjects that may not necessarily even think we may not even think that it applies to us. And so I would just invite you to stay with me and hang in there and really harvest what you're taking from the conversation, because I believe that you're going to see that in some way this could apply to you. Even if you're not a business owner, if you're ever part of a company that has the tool that we're discussing today, you're going to want to know about it. Trust me, you are going to want to know about it. And it's a topic that creates a very strong and healthy, high-performing culture. It reduces turnover. It creates higher engagement within the entire organization. And today's topic is really all about understanding something that's called an employee stock ownership plan. And it's a form of a retirement plan that's got enormous benefits to all parts of a company, especially when it's implemented correctly. And it's a subject I think that's really relevant today because there are so many people in the baby boomer and Gen X generations that are looking to transition out of their businesses and wanting to preserve their company and really even preserving their legacy. And sometimes they even have their wealth tied up in their business and they want to solve their liquidity problems and at the same time share that wealth with their employees. And so what I think is so interesting about this topic is that 41 years ago, my father was teaching farmers some techniques and tools to unlock and preserve their legacy and preserve their farms through a book that I recently found that he wrote back in 1985, I think it was. So it's always important to explore topics that stretch us and really keep us in an ever-learning mode. So to tackle our subject today, I've got a subject matter expert. His name is Dan Zugell. He's known as the ESOP man. So Employee Stock Ownership Plan, ESOP. Dan, the ESOP man. So Dan is the Senior Vice President at Business Transition Advisors, which is a premier and nationally respected consulting firm. They are dedicated to assisting owners of closely held businesses with their business succession and liquidity planning objectives, with sophisticated expertise in the education, analysis, valuation, design, and implementation of employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs for short. Now, Dan has a wealth of experiences spanning many financial disciplines, and he's risen to a nationally recognized ESOP thought leader. And he's been a featured speaker throughout the United States on ESOPs. Dan has authored and been featured in numerous prestigious financial publications, and he's also been in leadership roles with a number of different industry associations. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you, and I really hope that you're going to lean into this topic and your own growth space around it. So ask yourself, what can I learn, and how might this help me? So let's get into that conversation with Dan Zugell right now. Well, hey, Dan, I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, David, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. This is such an interesting conversation because, we've got a number of different audience members. We've got emerging leaders. We've got human resources professionals. We've got senior leaders and business owners. And all of the audience at one point is stretched in some manner. And so if for some reason you think that this particular episode may not apply to you and you're listening in, I would just challenge you to enter your growth zone and get outside of your comfort zone a little bit and hear about and learn about something new. And I know that Dan is going to talk about some things, some tools, some business planning that may stretch your mind just a little bit, especially if you're like an emerging leader and maybe this is all new to you, or if you're a senior leader and you're starting to think about the future and how you might transition. This could be a stretch for you as well, and we're gonna talk about that in just a moment. But Dan, let's start here. So tell me a little bit about your growth, your own growth plan and your own growth zone, and like where have you grown the most just in your life, in your career. You can take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking and thanks for having me. And thank
Sure.
you for everybody that's listening today. I appreciate that on a topic that not a lot of people know about, and I'm thrilled to share just a little glimpse of what we're talking about today, which are employee stock ownership plans, or
Yeah.
ESOPs as they're commonly referred.
Yeah.
And I often get asked, well, how'd you get into ESOP world? Like, did you,
Right.
graduate high school, go to college, and say I want to be Dan the ESOP man? And then, well, of course not. Who in the world would do that? I grew up in the financial services industry. I graduated
Yeah.
college here in Grove City up in Pennsylvania here, and my first job was a stockbroker out of Pittsburgh, and I was
Yeah.
just in the financial world, insurance world, things of that sort, and working here in Pittsburgh, and then got working for an insurance company based out of St. Louis, and they called me to say, hey, we're starting this program called ESOPs, and I'm like, what the heck's that? And I Googled it, of course,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this was 25 years ago. So, the
Sure.
Google was just kind of, just
Right.
learning on the dial up and kind of figuring that out. And
Yeah.
it turns out that it just only because it's interesting, but Tom Brady, the football player, his dad is who brought the concept to the insurance company I worked for and says,
Oh
hey,
my gosh.
if I do
That's
this
great.
thing called ESOP, would it
Yeah.
help my client? And we're like, we looked at it and says, yes. So they literally moved me to St. Louis to start an ESOP program with Tom Brady Sr.
Oh my
when
gosh.
Tom Jr. was just not even the starting quarterback in Michigan, which is
In Michigan.
shocking to
Yeah.
me, right?
Oh my
And it just
gosh.
kind
Yeah.
of grew from there. I found that ESOPs were just such a dynamic tool in a
Mm.
way for a business owner to take some or all chips off the table
Mm-hmm.
of their
Mm-hmm.
business and reward the employees with shares of the company, all the while they're getting fair market value for their stock. And it's
Yeah.
via an ESOP, which employee stock ownership plan, which is a government sponsored, and that scares some people, but it's a
Yeah.
legitimate retirement plan, like a
Love that.
401k, like a profit sharing plan, like a pension plan. But
Mm-hmm.
this retirement plan has one investment, and that's the stock of the sponsoring company.
Okay.
And boy, I learned about this, that there's tax incentives to businesses, tax and
Uh-huh.
benefits to the sellers, to encourage them to keep jobs in America, to keep
Yeah.
jobs in the town and community where they started, to keep people employed in those towns, and so they can share ownership of the company where they work.
That's
And it's just
amazing.
such a tremendous concept of, some people call it shared capitalism, and
Sure.
people make connotations politically one way or the other. But it's
Mm-hmm.
really funny when I have a presentation I do, and I share two quotes, a Ronald Reagan quote and a Bernie Sanders quote,
Sure.
both supporting ESOP, saying it's one of the
ESOPs.
best methods for American capitalism to survive.
That's amazing.
And I mean, these two guys couldn't agree on a post office.
Right.
And yet
Right.
they both love ESOP because it does such wonderful
Yeah.
things for employment, the economy, for
Mm.
employee retirements, and what it does for the
Yeah.
community is just amazing. So I fell in love with it.
Very
And I just
cool. Very
embraced
cool.
it and said, this is little known. People don't talk about it. And I'm going to run
Yeah.
with it and I'm going to preach it from the mountaintops. And I've been doing it for,
Yeah.
I think, in my 25th year or so.
Amazing. Wow. That's really amazing. What a cool story. Well,
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I thought about in preparation for this conversation is in today's world, we hear about all of the polls that tell us, and even, I know the employers who are listening, and human resources professionals maybe that are listening, they hear about this, disengagement of our workforce. And the thing that I thought about, that I think, and you can, let me know if I'm off base here, but I think if a company changes or creates an ESOP, that it was going to help the engagement of the employees, because they're owners.
Yeah.
Employees then become owners, and it's actually a company of owners. And I think that that's really an important aspect of an employer or a company going to an ESOP plan, or an employee stock ownership plan.
You're dead on. And it's quite remarkable. When people are owners, the perception changes. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
if I save
Yeah.
some money, I'm not just putting in old man McGlennon's pocket,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now
Right.
it's like, hey, it's my pocket.
My pocket. Yeah.
And then what you have is internal policing. I
Yeah.
had one scenario where it was a trucking company where they delivered products they created. And, here it was like 5:15, they're off at 5 o'clock, and the buddies are like, hey, come on, let's go to grab a drink or something. He goes, no, I'm going to finish this because I don't come into 9 a.m. tomorrow. The driver wanted to leave at 7 and I have to fix this tire. So I'm just going to stick around another 10 minutes, fix this tire so we could
Mm-hmm.
save 2 hours in the morning. That's an engagement.
Right.
And that's
Right.
just one anecdotal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just things from like waste and good ideas. Hey, let's move this table closer to this station. That'll save me walking 5 minutes there and 5 minute back 30 times a day times. I can't do
Mm-hmm.
the math that fast, but
Yeah.
that's workout, right? I can
Right.
get more
Right.
left-handed smoke shifters done if I just stay
Yes.
here and we move this table closer to this. And those kind of ideas that benefit them, the workforce as a whole, and they see it and they feel it with their statements of what their stock's worth, it makes a
Mm.
huge difference.
Well, and two, it seems to me that not only will there be better engagement, but also innovation. I mean, if I'm an owner in this company, my mindset is like, hey, exactly what you just talked about. Hey, I'm gonna think of ways that I can be more efficient and more effective in the things that I'm doing, no matter where I am in the
Right.
organization, no matter what seat on the bus I'm in. I'm going to
Right.
try to be figuring out the best way to be able to do things,
Yes.
so that we maximize our profitability, because it affects all of us, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And one thing before we go any further, David, I think it's
Yeah.
important to point out, we're saying that the business owner sells their business to their retirement plan, which is an ESOP, but
Yeah.
that's different than saying that the employees are paying for the stock. The
Oh, yeah,
employees are
yeah.
being, I want to be clear, the employees are being given stock over a period of years as an employee benefit.
Yeah, right.
And through the tax incentives of the government, both federal and state, the and through the tax savings, the future profits of the company are being used to pay the seller for the stock. So it's not coming out of the pockets of the employees in any way. They're being
Yeah.
given the shares over a period of years, and the seller is receiving their payment for the stock, partly through bank financing and partly through some seller installment payments, but it's being paid for out of future profits that are tax advantaged. So the employees are
So
being
it's
given, but the owner's still getting fair market value for their company. It sounds like
yeah.
that wouldn't both be true, but it is.
Right. So it's not like a stock option where the employee has to pay for the stock. They're being
Correct.
given the stock. So
Literally being given the stock over a period of years. Correct.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
when they
That's
leave, the company has a legal obligation and enforced by the Department of Labor, because this is a retirement plan. This isn't something that Dan and
right.
David made up, to do a podcast. I mean, this is a
Right.
legitimate, true blue,
Yeah.
defined contribution retirement plan overseen by ERISA and the Department of Labor that
Mm-hmm.
says, this is the type of plan. Here's what you can do. Here's the legal boundaries. And then when the
Mm,
employee leaves, hopefully after a nice long retirement, but it could be death, disability, unfortunately, could
mm-hmm.
be they quit or get fired.
Sure.
When they leave for some reason, the company must buy their shares back. and
Okay.
pay the employees for their shares. So when they exit the company, they
Mm.
get cash on a certain period of time, and then
Uh-huh.
they could roll that into a personal IRA where
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
still not taxed. So it's not taxed
Okay.
while they have it at the company. And then they tax-free roll over it into a
Mm.
personal IRA. It's still not taxed at that point. And then at
Okay.
some point, if they use it,
Mm-hmm.
according to whatever tax laws in their state, federal government, it may or may not be taxed at that point.
Got
But
it.
because this ESOP benefit is so great because of what I just described,
Mm-hmm.
the average employee at an ESOP company, just the
Mm-hmm.
run, let's say the run-of-the-mill employee at an ESOP company has 2.5 times the retirement plan balance than the same employee at the same company that doesn't have an ESOP. So
Mm.
all things being equal, this
Yeah.
employee at employee A, uh, company A with an ESOP has 2.5 times the retirement plan benefit as an equivalent employee at company B that doesn't have an ESOP. 2.5 times.
Wow.
That's why the
Wow.
governments like it. That's why they give significant tax benefits to
Okay, yeah,
encourage it.
because that's where I was going to go with this. Like, is like, why would the government actually do this? And and so you just explained that, and I think that you hit on a point too that I want to make sure that everybody really understands, and that is this was put into place in 1974 under ERISA. So
Yes.
some of our listeners may or may not know what ERISA is, but it's a large piece of legislation that got put into place, for employee benefits and a lot of different things, and ESOPs are just one of them.
Yeah. ERISA is the granddaddy of rules and regulation that oversee every retirement plan,
Right.
401ks. It's the mothership of
Yeah.
laws that
Right.
govern retirement plans. And
Yeah.
ESOP is under that same category.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, and one of the things too that I know about this subject is that it really is a great succession tool. It's a way for a business owner to recognize not only that his or her employees got them to where they are, but also to ensure that their company is going to continue on beyond themselves and to really create a legacy. So maybe talk about, like, why don't business owners do more of this, or
Yeah.
put this into place more often?
Yeah. Yep. That was a impactful question. Several things in there, David. So
Yeah.
let's start with as an exit strategy. Let's start there. And you
Yeah.
might have to remind me of some of the other points up to that.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
yes, ESOPs were designed as an exit. We've been talking about as an exit strategy. We've been talking about it
Yeah.
as an employee benefit, which it is.
Right. Right.
But it's only an employee benefit if and when a owner wants to take some chips off the table. So by
Sure, sure,
definition, it's an exit strategy of sorts. So it's a
sure.
combined exit strategy and employee benefit, but the employee
Got it.
benefit doesn't happen until somebody wants an exit strategy and wants to monetize and take some chips off the table. So it is
Right.
generally used as, and that's generally when we see it, a business owner who's at the age 55, 60, 65, older, that says, look, I'm ready to move on.
Hmm.
I potentially want to, my key managers are wonderful, but they cannot afford to buy me, or they're not
Sure.
willing to take on the SBA loans and the risk and the collateral and everything
Hmm.
that's necessary to do that, or they don't want to sell to some. Unfortunately, there's other methods of selling business. I
Yep.
realize that I'm biased. I have
Yeah.
a lens, but the
Yeah.
reason ESOPs were put in place is because of some of the detrimental things that happen when businesses are sold other
Hmm.
ways.
Right.
People get
Sure.
laid off. I mean, every business
Sure.
buys itself, they say, and they do it through
Yeah.
efficiencies. And unfortunately, that often means jobs.
Right.
And that
Right.
means we'll take a patent, shut down the production facility here, ship it to China, ship it to another state. And that
Hmm.
small community, especially here in Western Pennsylvania, where we happen to be,
Yeah. Sure.
you have some things, north central PA or something. You lose a 50-person tool and die shop. That's
Yeah.
very significant to that town.
Yeah. Right.
ESOPs were designed to be an a very tax advantage exit strategy for business owners,
Hmm.
yet to curb the ill effects of selling to via other methods. And I won't name them,
Right.
but
Sure. Sure.
to prevent layoffs and prevent
Yeah.
shutdowns and things of that sort. So that's why they were kind of put in place, and which is why the government gives some tax incentives that I'd like to get into at some point. So that was the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
part of your question there. And then I think the
Yeah.
second one was something about why don't people know about it and why aren't
Yeah.
people
Why,
using
why
it,
why
right?
aren't more people doing,
Yeah,
doing this and putting these into place? Because I mean, with all of the tax advantages and also just the ability to be able to incentivize and reward their people. I mean, it just makes a lot of
yeah.
sense.
Well, a lot of it is just flat out knowledge and people ignorant and
Yeah.
not, I don't mean to be rude. I'm saying they're
Yeah.
ignorant
They
of
just
how
don't
they
know
work.
about it. Yeah.
There is complication to it. It's
Sure. Sure.
not super easy, but that's why people like me exist. There are
Right.
wonderful attorneys out there. There's wonderful consultants like me. There's wonderful people
Hmm.
that can break down ESOPs and make it bite-sized, chewable pieces and get the
Yeah.
thing done because like a lot of sophisticated planning, really
Hmm.
good benefits come from working with the right professionals and getting it done. Now, I will
Right.
say there's my peers out there that I love and respect in the exit planning world just don't know ESOPs. And so therefore
Sure.
they don't talk about them or they unfortunately a lot of people badmouth, oh, they're too complicated, they're too expensive,
Okay. Yeah.
it's not for everybody, or it's probably not right for you. It's because they don't know and they're ignorant. But what's
Sure. Sure.
happening is you probably be hearing in our audience is probably going to be hearing more and more. Part of the work provision of the Secure Act 2 had an
Hmm.
ESOP provision in it, employee
Okay.
ownership provisions. Every state is going to have an employee ownership component to it now, every
Okay.
state.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania has pending legislation
Okay.
that's going to increase employee ownership. The city of Pittsburgh, which is
Uh-huh.
south of where I am right now, city of
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Council has a task force as well as other states and other cities. So you're hearing more and more
Hmm.
about ESOPs. So people are being forced. So the attorneys, the accountants, the financial advisors, the trusted people are being forced to learn about them. And I would say
Yeah.
to people that have been to exit planning seminars, like I've been
Yeah.
my whole life, I've been to dozens and dozens and dozens where ESOP wasn't even a bullet point
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
people just didn't know about it. Well, the word's getting out, people are understanding it, being forced to learn about it, and they're thrilled when they hear about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
did I miss a
Well,
part of your question?
no, 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 no. I mean, I think it's
Okay.
I think that, that was the biggest thing. I think it's just that, a lot of people don't know about this tool. And the great thing about this particular tool is that it provides a way for the vast majority of companies to be able to save jobs, create better engagement, lower their turnover because people are
Yeah.
are wanting to stay where they are because they're invested. They're
Right.
invested in the company, and I think it's just a great tool. Maybe talk just a little bit about like what are the leadership implications of an ESOP, and I guess what I mean by that is, why would a company who puts an ESOP in want to, let's say, invest in like their emerging leaders and some of their leadership development and their people development? Why would that be important for them?
Um, I'm sorry, David. Repeat the first part of that question. We may have to edit this.
Yeah,
Start
that's
that
okay.
question
Yeah,
over.
that's okay. Yeah.
My head
So
was moving.
yeah, no, 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 that's fine. So my question is really is, why is it important for a company who sees the value of an ESOP and puts it into place? Why would they want to then invest in their people, and invest in their leadership as a tool to really help the whole organization?
Yep. Well, first of all, people that do ESOPs often it's for their legacy.
Yeah. Okay.
They
Okay.
want to be known in their town for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to be known for that.
Mhm.
A case in here in that I talked to somebody about ESOP, they didn't do it. A couple of years later, I bumped into this gentleman. He said, "Oh my gosh, I should have did the ESOP with you." I said, "I know," but I said,
Uh,
besides that, what are you saying?" He goes, "Well, I was so excited. I bought a Cadillac, brand new Cadillac of my dreams. A couple weeks after I sold, drove it to church on Sunday morning, found out that Sunday morning that the purchaser just laid off everybody in the town. So here I
mm,
am in the church pew in my brand new Cadillac
oh
in the
wow.
town where everybody else sitting in the church pew next to just lost their jobs because of my greed, because I
Yeah.
didn't want to consider an ESOP because I thought I wasn't going to get as much,
Hmm.
which he would have.
Yeah.
and said, man, so that community and family legacy, especially in the smaller towns,
Sure.
that's a big deal. They
Yeah.
don't want to be the person that laid off the entire town, and they care about the, donating to the Boy Scouts, things of that sort. So that is important,
Yeah.
to a lot of people. So why would they invest in the key employees?
Yeah.
Is, well, they want that legacy to continue, right?
Right.
And then from a more practical standpoint, to be
Yeah.
real down and dirty,
Yeah.
I said they don't get all their money up front. They get some of their money from the bank.
Mhm.
Plus, it takes a few years. They're banking on the company because they could have gotten a big
Sure.
check from some other outfit and walked
Yep.
away. They say, look, I'm willing to invest and get my money over time because
Hmm.
I value these employees and I don't want this company to be sold. I trust
Yeah.
my management, emerging and
Yeah.
exist senior management. So I'm
Yeah.
willing to trust them to get paid over a
Yeah.
period of years. So I do trust and invest in these folks. And so I want to
Yeah.
reward them not only with ESOP shares, but probably some kind of other executive management um, uh, plans
Bonuses and
and
plans.
whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's in everybody's interest to
Yeah.
maintain the legacy and to get paid, to be
Right.
frank.
Right. Well,
Right.
and I think, yeah, I think what I hear you say too, it's really a mindset that, look, I believe in my people. I see their potential, and I see the potential of the organization. And I think you also said a key word there too, and that's legacy. It's really about the legacy of an organization. And I think, when I think of legacy, I think especially of family businesses. And I don't remember the statistic, but I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of or a large majority of companies in this country are family owned businesses.
Yeah.
And if so, then maybe, like, talk a little bit about why is this a tool that's really good for a family business?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I'm really glad you brought that up because the family business aspect, some people just think off the top of their head, well, it's a family business and ESOP wouldn't make sense. They're just going to give it to family.
Yeah.
But as a lot of people on this podcast might realize, there's a lot of fractionalized businesses now, right? It's not
Yeah.
generation one anymore. I'm
Right.
in business with my cousin's ex-husband,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
we're at some point they're saying, look, I'm running everything here. I'm giving, 10% of my profits to this schmuck. I'm giving 20% of my profits to this person. They have nothing to do with the business. And what I'm
Yeah.
doing is I'm growing value that only going to bite me in the butt later when they want to
Mm.
sell. So I'm jacking
Yeah.
up the value so I can pay them more later for their stock, and they're getting
Hmm.
distributions all along the way to live their fat lifestyle. At some
Right.
point, people say, "Hey, look, it's time to let's clean this up."
Sure.
I still
Sure.
love the idea that the family name is on the door, and if I sell to some other methods, family name might not be in the door. It's Conglomerate Inc. on the
Yeah.
door.
Sure. Sure.
And that receptionist up there who's probably overpaid, no longer working there, and then you have the
Yeah.
legacy thing going on. But when you have maybe some families still in the business, others that aren't, we sell to the ESOP, but yet it's still, we didn't talk about control yet, but let's talk about control real quick. Because
Yeah.
when you sell to an ESOP, the family or their designee still
Hmm.
control the board of directors, are still
Yeah.
making the decisions of
Okay.
the company. The ESOP trustee, the person who oversees the ESOP, is an absentee owner generally. The board is run by the family. So it's still a family run business.
Got it.
Grandma and grandpa's picture still in the foyer, the
Yep.
first dollar bill still hanging.
Sure.
Still a family run business. And it's been described wonderfully by a client of mine that says all we did was expand the definition of family. Our
Mm.
family name is still running the business. We're still known. We're
Yeah.
still the people getting interviewed by the newspaper. We're the ones that had a wonderful article about saving jobs in our community, but yet we just shared the ownership with our employees
Mm.
who love us for doing this. Because a lot of folks like I've had people cry at the meetings when we roll out the ESOPs. I've been worried about Bill over here keels over. This guy's like, I'm a 57-year-old welder, and it's
Yeah.
small town Ohio. If
Yeah.
he dies, this business closes. Who's going to hire me? He's
Right.
like, now I know I have a job. And not only do I have a job, I'm getting ownership in this company at my
Right.
age. And he points his
Right.
finger at the younger folks saying, you have no idea what he just did for you. No idea.
Yeah.
Please understand this. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
hope that
yeah.
answers it.
So, well, and I hear so often, because I work with organizations in their culture, and I hear them talking about a culture like a family. And so this is, I think this is a way that
Oh,
you actually create the family, and
yeah.
you 100% make this a family
Oh,
because everybody's in this together. And I
oh,
think when
yeah.
everybody's in this together, then there's people that they have an owner's mindset. And
Yeah.
speaking of culture, I can think of one of my clients who has a cultural fundamental that is think like an owner. And you even talked about it, earlier, and off camera, we talked about,
Yeah.
hey, when you rent a car, do you actually wash it before you take it back? And
Yeah.
it's a different mentality,
Yeah.
right? I don't own
Exactly.
this thing.
Yeah.
I'm just here doing my job. But if I'm an owner of the organization, my mindset's going to be a different mindset.
Exactly. And it's so true. And especially people get proud. The employee owned, employee proud t-shirts
Yeah, yeah,
and they have the
exactly.
Yetis that say ESOP on them. And it's a whole world. It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. Yeah. It's fun to be a part of.
Well, what holds people back from doing something like this? And I so the title of this podcast is in the growth space, and I think that sometimes when we hear about something new, it scares us, and
Yeah.
we make up all of these stories of things that just maybe aren't true. So
Right.
maybe talk a little bit about what holds people
Yeah.
back from,
Yeah.
putting something like this into
Perfect.
their
There are
business.
several myths.
Okay.
One is doesn't work in family businesses. Well, I just kind of
Yeah.
talked about
We
it.
just
I'd
talked
probably
about
say
that. Yeah.
75% of our ESOPs we put in place are in a family business.
Okay. Yeah.
The family works there. It's multiple family members. It's usually maybe, often it's first generation, but in the second generation just doesn't want it or can't
Yeah.
afford it, or the kid's a schmuck.
No, you're
You
right.
never know.
Yeah.
Or
Just
it's
doesn't want. Yeah.
fractionalized over generations. So family business is probably majority of the cases we do. So that's one.
Okay.
Second is,
Okay.
oh, it's too expensive. Well, frankly, there is cost to it, but it's
Sure.
generally less expensive than other methods of selling a business. I mean,
Sure.
this is a mergers and acquisition transaction. This isn't I
Yeah.
paid 10 grand for a study or something, or put in a life insurance
Yeah.
plan or something. We're
Right.
transitioning a business. So there is expense
Right.
to it. And compared to the other methods, it's often half or a third of the cost in reality.
Sure. Sure.
So that's kind of relative there. I'm going to lose control. That's another myth. I don't want to
Okay.
lose control. Well, technically, yeah, you're selling the company to some
Right.
extent. There is a trustee who represents the employees that's absentee. And in theory, they own the stock and can fire anybody they want to fire. But in my 25 years, that's only happened once. And that's because the seller who agreed to a compensation package was embezzling money.
Oh, good.
He sold the company.
Okay.
You can't do that. He was
Yeah.
warned,
Right.
and they had one time in 25 years in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ESOPs. So the board
Yeah.
is still controlled by the family. And just
Gotcha.
once a year, twice a year, they tell the trustee what's up, make sure they're
Mm-hmm.
not breaking any laws, and the family still runs the business. So they don't lose control.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. Another myth is I don't get fair market value for my stock.
Yeah. Sure.
ESOP's a financial buyer. You get
Okay.
fair market value. Now, if somebody comes in with some crazy checkbook,
Yeah.
ESOP can't compete, nor can you or
Sure.
me. I go in to
Sure.
buy a widget company. I'm paying fair market value. I'm not paying 140% of fair market value. ESOP
Right.
can't pay that. No financial buyer can pay that. If somebody comes in with that money, you weigh the money versus the impact on your employees, and you make the decision you want to make.
Sure.
But
Sure.
those are kind of the myths. And
Yeah.
there's one other topic I'd like to jump into real quick
Yeah.
because
Sure.
I'd
Hey,
be
I love it.
remiss without talking about it. It's the
Yeah. Sure.
taxation. I kept teasing the
Yeah.
tax benefits.
That was
And
something
so
I
with
was
all these
curious
good
about.
things that happen,
Hmm.
there are tax benefits, and
Yeah.
they may sound too good to be true. And that's the reason I talk about Bernie Sanders and Ronald Reagan and the
Yeah.
governments and whatnot, just to say, look, because everybody says to me, when are they going to realize these loopholes and shut them down? Because
Yeah.
man, they're too
Sure.
good. Don't tell anybody. No,
Yeah.
they actually love ESOPs, and they're actually, like I said, with the Secure Act and state
Hmm.
legislatures are actually increasing the tax benefits because even with the tax benefits I'm going to talk about,
Yeah.
the actual tax revenue into the governments, federal, state, local,
Hmm.
actually increase because
Okay.
ESOP companies are 4 times less likely to lay off employees during tough economic times. They
Okay.
average about 8 to 10% higher in wages. So employees get
Okay.
higher paychecks. They pay a little more income tax on their personal.
Hmm.
Because they have independent wealth, 2.5
Yep.
times the average retirement plan benefit. Less people
Wow.
relying on government safety nets.
Okay.
Not only that, the flip side of that is they're the people buying cars in retirement, going on
Yep.
vacations in retirement, spending
Mm,
money at restaurants in retirement, and the
right.
ripple effect of, well, I'm buying a car, I take out a loan at the local bank. That's a loan the bank got. The car dealership sold a car. So the
Yeah.
economic activity that's generated from ESOPs
Mm,
is about a 5 or 6 year crossover is greater than the tax benefits that the government's giving up. So with that preface, here are the
hmm.
couple of the tax benefits. One of the
Yeah.
major ones is, and sometimes you get both, sometimes you get one or the other. The one is if you sell your business to an ESOP in a certain structure,
Hmm.
the seller potentially can eliminate the capital gains tax that's normally due on a sale.
Okay.
So on almost, if you sold me your business, David,
Yeah.
you'd have to pay tax on everything, the
Yeah.
difference between your investment in your business
Cost
and what I
basis. Yeah.
bought the business for. And so
Yeah.
you have Joe's Cement Company that started with a wheelbarrow and a bag of Quikrete,
Yeah.
and their total investment in this business is $10,000 and they sell it for 30 million.
Yeah.
So
That's a
20, I can't do that math, but twenty nine
yeah.
million
That's a
nine
big
hundred ninety thousand is taxable to the
right.
federal government and the state government. And
Yeah.
so that's a big chunk. In an ESOP world, that
Hmm.
can go away. It's one of the
That's
only
amazing.
ways out there that
That's
you can
amazing.
defer and then eliminate the capital gains tax on a sale. That's insane.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, as great as that is, that's not even the driver of modern ESOPs. The other tax benefit is what drives modern ESOPs.
Huh.
It's this. If a company is 100% ESOP owned,
Yeah.
the owner sells it and the employees, the ESOP trust owns the stock, all the stock for the benefit of the employees, the profits cease to be taxable.
The
Literally,
profits
the
in the
profits
business.
on the company cease to be taxed because the tax bill
Wow.
goes to a retirement plan. The
Okay.
401k doesn't pay tax, a profit sharing plan doesn't pay tax, and
Right.
ESOP doesn't pay tax. So
Right.
therefore, no tax dollars are going to the federal, state, or local government. We've just increased the cash flow of the company by 35 to
Yeah.
45%, depending on where you live.
Wow.
That increased cash flow is what we use to pay off the debt. And that's
Mm.
usually more than the debt payments,
Yeah.
the tax
Yeah.
savings alone. And then when the debt's gone, it goes right to the bottom line. And that's when the employee's benefits explode.
Got it.
So but that's why I prefaced with don't feel bad for the government. They actually come out ahead,
They're okay.
even
Yeah.
though, and that's from the economic activity, which is good. But
Right.
even though the company seller might not pay tax and the company doesn't pay taxes along the way on the profits, they just literally dissipate, they go away.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's how we pay for ESOPs. And so those
Gotcha.
tax benefits are tremendous. So for any
Yeah.
CFOs that are listening here, it's
Yeah.
nice running a company where you don't have to, you eliminate, you erase that tax line.
That tax line.
It's
Yeah.
really nice.
Right. Right. And those CFOs, kind of keep their own jobs too, right? So they're
Yeah.
not
Oh,
selling to a
absolutely.
private equity firm and the PE
That,
firm is saying, hey, thanks. You did a great
yeah.
job setting us up, but see you
Unfortunately,
later.
that's often what happens. They're the ones in charge of finding the sale. And then the
Yeah.
sale they find is what eliminates their own job, unfortunately. ESOPs
Right.
really protect. In fact, the CFO and the other top management in an ESOP, when the owner sells and they get almost all their money,
Yeah.
those senior management, they're the logical next president, CEO, chair of the board. There's nobody else
Right.
waiting in line.
Yeah.
Whereas you have the
Right.
other forms of selling a company, they have some hotshot MBA that's going to come in and run your company.
Right. Right. Well,
Not
I,
to
you know, I,
insult any hotshot MBAs that might be listening. I'm sorry.
yeah, we're not
Didn't want to
insulting
do that.
anybody.
Let's edit.
Yeah, we'll edit that. No, that's great, Dan. Well, I just here's the thing I think is really important for our listeners to take away from this conversation is that there are tools out in the world that oftentimes we may not know about, but I want to be able to bring tools like this. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, Dan, because I saw this as a tool that helps in a number of different ways for companies, company owners, engagement, retention, lowering, the employee turnover. There's just a lot of great benefits in understanding this particular tool that's available to most businesses. Now I say most businesses because I know that there are some requirements. Maybe talk just a little bit about that real quick before
Yeah.
we kind of wrap some
No,
things up.
that's a good idea. Yeah, for an ESOP, there is a kind of a size threshold to
Sure.
be worth the expense.
Right.
There is, yes, the expense is relative to other methods, but there's still
Yeah.
expense. And there's
Sure.
some government rules. This is why a lot of people don't get involved, because there are some rules
Right.
of testing that the government puts some testing rules in that trap smaller companies sometimes
Hmm.
unintentionally,
Mm.
unforced error there. But we need a company generally worth about 10 million of value,
Okay.
give or take.
Sure.
Anything above 10 million is probably going to work. We need 25 or 30 employees,
Okay.
payroll, million, 2 million, somewhere around that.
Okay.
And getting to that 2 million of 10 million of value, that's 2 million for those that are in the financial world, 2 million of net income with some adjustments or EBITDA. Net
Uh-huh.
income, you add back some other things, maybe some excess owner salary that wouldn't maybe
Hmm.
go forward. We can add that back. So when you
Right.
get that number to about $2 million and we multiply that by an exit multiple or a sale multiple, you can get up to about the 10 million of value. So we
Okay.
kind of need
Yeah.
to start there to make it
Start
worth
there.
the
Yeah.
expense and the while and pass all the testing and things of that sort. Now, there are other forms of employee ownership
Okay.
that aren't ESOPs, that aren't tax efficient, but there are other methods that somebody could contact and me, and I can get you information on that. And there's one other study I'd like to point out.
Yeah. Sure.
PwC, PricewaterhouseCooper, did a study that says that, and this is unfortunate, this is very sad, that 75% of all business sellers, the people that
Hmm.
sell their business,
Yeah.
quote unquote, profoundly regret selling their business within a year.
That's
Contrast that
fascinating.
to
Wow.
an ESOP. There was an
Hmm.
ESOP study done in 2015 that said 93% are satisfied or very satisfied
Wow.
with the sale,
Okay.
with only 7% neutral or dissatisfied. So the complete flip.
Opposite. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And,
Yes.
I'd heard that statistic about, that being profoundly regretting the sale of their business. And I think, wow, it probably has a lot to do with, either who they sold it to, what happened afterwards,
Correct.
both from a professional perspective and maybe even a personal perspective, because I know
Yeah.
that's something that I'm going to be talking about in future episodes, and
Yeah. Right.
actually we're
Right.
going to be doing some workshops on creating that next act plan.
Yes.
So yeah, so Dan, I think first of all, for our listeners who this may be something new, hopefully this has been an expanding conversation, and something that a subject that is stretching you a little bit, and helping you to understand the tools that are available, and maybe even just thinking like an owner. If you're an emerging leader and this is something new for you, this is probably your growth space. This is really giving
Yeah.
you a growth opportunity. So I really I appreciate this conversation for that purpose as well. If you're a senior leader and you're watching, my hope is that this has also opened your mind to the opportunities that are out there to help you think about the future, because I think it's really important for all of us to think and plan our future. None of us knows what tomorrow holds, but if we plan for certain eventualities, at least we can know that our business is taken care of, and our employees are taken care of as well. And so I think that that's a really important facet of this conversation. Dan, is there anything that we've missed that we should talk about that we haven't yet?
Boy, we covered a lot. I mean, I think maybe if people enjoyed this, maybe another time we come and talk about the estate planning and things
Sure.
of that sort. There's a lot of things
Yes.
we didn't talk about. There's a lot
Yeah.
of side tentacles that we just don't have time to talk about on this one. That
Yeah.
maybe another point we could talk about some other things. But I think we covered pretty much every major aspect from a high level to kind of to
Yeah.
get folks at least aware of what's going on in the ESOP world. I think we're in good shape.
Awesome. Well, and here's what I want to encourage our listeners to do as well. So, if this is an interest to you, if you're a business owner, if you're intrigued by this conversation, please reach out to Dan. And Dan, where can people find you, and where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, my business. I didn't even say this from the beginning. You might. My name is Dan Zugell, Zugell. So you Google Dan Zugell, I'll probably pop up. Or Dan the ESOP Man,
Yep.
that would probably pop up.
Great
Or Dan the
branding.
ESOP
Yeah.
Man.com.
Yeah.
And my firm that I actually work for is Business Transition Advisors. We're an ESOP, but businesstransitionadvisors.com, but nobody ever remembers that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
Dan the ESOP man, people generally remember one way or the other, you'll get to me. My phone number is 724-766-3998. You'll find me if you want to find me.
Well, and we will put all of the contact information in the show
Okay.
notes. So people, if you're driving, if you're working out, whatever you're doing, just go to the show notes. We'll have all of Dan's information there, so you could just
Thank you.
find it there. So yeah,
Thank you.
Dan, thank you for sharing your knowledge with the audience today, and really this whole idea of an ESOP is such a great tool on a number of different fronts. And I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. I feel the passion and I feel your mission in really, furthering this tool.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. And thank you everybody that stuck through it to the end here.
Yeah,
Appreciate that. And it was a pleasure being
absolutely.
here, and let me know if I could be of help.
Sounds good, Dan. Thanks again.